What's up, everybody? Ron from Fantasy Flow. In this video, we're going to be doing Week 4 wide receiver rankings. So we're going to do a simple tier list. We already had Thursday Night Football, so we already saw CeeDee Lamb and Malik Neighbors, but I figured I'll just keep them in this video so you guys see where I ranked them before the matchup. I didn't move them. You guys can check. Without wasting any more of your time, let's just jump into this video, guys. I created this tier list. I uploaded these images, and the first dude on the list is going to be Justin Jefferson. I know this is kind of weird having him as my number one. That compared to Fantasy Pros, that is a 1 spot difference. So they have him at 2. Basically, my thinking is that it's a divisional matchup. It's a very important game. It's going to be high intensity. I know Jair Alexander is going to be covering him, but I'm not too worried about that. I mean, this is Jetta's. He's him. He's Himothy. I'm not worried about that Jair Alexander cover. Number 2 is going to be Jamar Chase. So they're desperate, bro. The Bengals need to win this game. They need to pretty much win the next. They need to win the next 3 just to break even, bro, and get back to 500. So it's going to be a matchup that is very important. It's desperation time, and it's a pretty decent matchup. Next guy is Amon-Ra St. Brown. What can I say, bro? It's against the Seahawks. It's a very important matchup. It could be a shootout. These are 2 teams that are 2 of the top teams in the NFC. So I expect a shootout. I expect Amon-Ra St. Brown to be very involved. Laporta is out, so that means more underneath stuff for St. Brown. They're going to need him extra in this game. I have him 2 spots above Fantasy Pros. For Chase, I have him also 2 spots above. So next dude on the list is CeeDee Lamb. I know he already played, but he was my number 4. It's just a good matchup. It's Thursday Night Football. It was a silo game. We don't need to talk about CeeDee Lamb. I had him actually 3 spots under consensus, so I have him at 4, obviously. Next is Nico Collins. Basically, the Jags are going to get torched. I think the Texans are going to dominate them. I think it's going to be a Nico game. There's no Tank Dell here, so I just think Nico's in a great spot to dominate. Malik Neighbors is I'll put him in S tier, Malik Neighbors. I mean, he already played, as I mentioned, insane volume. The Cowboys just could not cover him. He only scored 17 fantasy points in half PPR, so he didn't get into the end zone. That's why I had him at 7 or so, right? And not at, or at 6 and not at, 3 or 4, which I think it's going to end up coming to fruition by the end of the week. Next guy, which will start the A tier, is going to be Rashee Rice. Basically, he just has so much volume, right? I know the Chargers have a really good coverage rating. They were through weeks 1 and 2. They were the number 2 rated cover team in the NFL, but they're banged up right now, right? So their offense, I don't think is going to be able to move the ball. I don't think their defense is going to be able to hang. They're just going to be on the field way too long, and I imagine Rice just continuing his possession dominance. Next is Chris Godwin. Cup roll, dude. He's in the Cooper Cup roll. It is engaged. I have him at 8, dude. I just think the offense seems to be humming, and it seems to be built around Chris Godwin. They're doing Evans, unfortunately, is kind of taking one for the team. He's jumping on the grenade for the Bucks, and he's really taking a lot of the double coverage. He's taking the best corner usually, and Chris Godwin's just going to continue being able to profit from that. Honestly, Chris Godwin will probably be worse if Mike Evans goes out. So DK Metcalf is my next one. I have him 2 spots ahead as well. It's the similar thesis for Amon-Ra St. Brown. It's just going to be a shootout. The Lions don't have a cover corner. And DK Metcalf the past couple weeks has faced cover corners, so he had some tough matchups, but he's just their wide receiver. He's their alpha, bro, and I just expect him to probably get in the end zone again this week. Marvin Harrison is my number 9 player. That's kind of late, or it's underneath what consensus says. I have him 4 spots under consensus. Basically, the thesis that the Commanders leak points to wide receivers, so you'd expect somebody's going to pop off, right? It was Jamar Chase in week 3. It was, I forgot who in week 2 and 1, but somebody always popped off. I think this could be one of those games, though, where it's a combination of Mike Wilson, Marvin Harrison, and Dortch. If it all funnels to Marvin Harrison, then I'm wrong, but I still have him at 9, so it's not like I'm ranking him in the bottom 20. So Marvin Harrison is that one. Next one is Garrett Wilson. Basically, just we have some rapport building with Aaron Rodgers. He did say at the end of the game, just wait till me and number 5 get, on point together. It's going to be real nice. So he's moving up, but he is going to be seeing Patrick Surtain, so that is why I have him this low. Next is Devontae Adams. This is just greasy wheel. Greasy wheel gets the, or what is it? Sneaky wheel gets the grease. No, squeaky wheel gets the grease. I think he had a tough game last week. Raiders need to make some business decisions, according to Antonio Pierce. And I think if anybody wants to maintain their starting role, it is to feed Devontae Adams. You will be able to keep your job if you do that because he will produce. Next dude who starts the B tier is going to be DJ Moore. DJ Moore is essentially going to be playing against the Rams. I have him 5 spots ahead of consensus. The Rams are terrible. They don't have really a good defense. I can imagine this being a shootout, to be honest. It's finally a game where I think Caleb Williams can maybe settle down a little bit. He is from USC, and they're playing in Chicago. That would have been cool if they were playing in LA, because it would have been a big Caleb Williams contingency, right? Because the Rams and USC are both in LA. So next on the list is Tyreek Hill. I think he's still Tyreek at the end of the day. I have 7 spots ahead of consensus. The Titans are not smothering anyone in terms of coverage. They have a really good interior defensive line, so that's where the Titans do well on defense. But I do think it should be a closer game. I think Will Levis and the Titans are more closely matched with Tyler Huntley and the Dolphins than maybe last week when they had to play against the Bills, which is absolutely getting thrown into the fire. If you're Skylar Thompson, poor guy, had to play against the Bills in his first game. I mean, they're making everybody look like ass cheeks. Next is Deontay Johnson, kind of high up, but we saw with the red rifle, Deontay is looking good, bro. He's getting so much volume. Cincinnati's desperate. That's why I don't have Deontay a little bit higher. I know a lot of people have Deontay in like the top 10 this week. I just think Cincinnati's desperate. I think I can imagine this defense saying, everybody thinks we're the fucking worst defense in the NFL. We need to prove them wrong. I think Hendrickson can get home, can pressure Andy Dalton, and I can imagine this game being kind of a blowout, to be honest. I think Andy Dalton comes back to earth, and he's the backup that we all thought he was. Mike Evans is the next one, as I mentioned with the Chris Godwin thesis. Basically, he's still good for touchdowns, right? I know he's taking a back seat, so that's why I have him 2 spots under consensus, but Mike Evans, he's still going to get, a lot of attention from the defense, but fortunately enough, Philadelphia doesn't really have like a shadow cover corner. They do have Slay, but I don't think Slay is somebody that can really hang with Evans. I can imagine Evans getting a touchdown in this one. Next dude is going to be Zay Flowers. Basically, the thesis here is that the Buffalo Bills are a very, very, very good defense, but they're going to be needing someone like Zay Flowers on these broken coverages, on these short routes. I can imagine this being like an Isaiah Likely, Mark Andrews, Zay Flowers game. Derrick Henry really struggling. But if you're going to beat the Bills, you do have to beat them in the air, so that's why I think Zay Flowers is in a decent spot here. Drake London is the next guy. I mean, there's not much to say. It's just Atlanta doesn't look very bad, so that's why I have him kind of middle of the pack, pretty literally right in the middle. George Pickens is the next one. George Pickens, what can I say about Pickens? Finally not going to be getting shadow coverage, and he's got big play potential. That's why I have him 5 spots ahead of consensus. Back to Tyreek Hill and Deontay Johnson. I have both of them 7 spots ahead of consensus. I do think they're going to be better than what people think. And now next one is Stephon Diggs. Basically, no Tank Dell. He's getting good volume so far. 5 spots ahead of consensus. They're playing against Jacksonville. Jacksonville is decrepit. That is a very easy matchup. I think it's something that, I can just imagine the Texans dominating. Nico Collins and Dell, probably even Cam Akers popping off. Terry McLaurin is the next guy in the B list, B tier. Basically, good rapport with Daniels. They showed some link up. I have them 6 spots ahead of consensus. They're playing against Arizona. I can imagine this being a shootout. It's just good. He's trending up. Shootout potential. Good offense. I think Terry McLaurin's in a good spot here. That's why I have him ahead of Brandon Ayuk, who's the next guy in the C tier. Now, I have Brandon Ayuk quite far behind. I have him 10 spots behind consensus. And the reason for that is Christian Gonzalez. I do think Gonzalez will be shadowing Ayuk, or at least anytime he's on Gonzalez's side. I probably have him too low. I think 22 is pretty brutal, right? Or 21, what is that? He should probably be in the top 15, but I just like the matchups ahead of him a little bit better. And, Juwan Jennings showing up really takes away some of the ceiling of Ayuk. Ayuk can still pop up for 2 touchdowns any given week. So Chris Olave is the next one. Did I mess this up? Yep. Chris Olave. Also 10 spots under consensus. He's just not solidified enough in the offense. We drafted him as a second round pick, but he's playing more like a 5th round pick. He's playing maybe we should have been swapping Olave and Godwin, right, in preseason ADP. Next is Amari Cooper. Amari Cooper honestly looks really good in terms, like, just in a vacuum. Amari Cooper has been playing really good, especially last week. I know the first couple weeks he was getting volume, but he wasn't doing anything. He had some drops. He was just looking off. Something was off, but I think it's just a chemistry thing with him and Deshaun Watson. I do have him 7 spots under ADP, but he looked good last week, right? I just think Watson scares me. Like, any given week, Watson can turn into a fart. I mean, he's always a fart, so he does. Any given week, he can turn into a good quarterback, I guess. Jaden Reed is the next one. My mouth is dry as shit. Yeah, if Love plays, Jaden Reed's a good play. But if Love is hobbled and he's playing hobbled, that's why I have Jaden Reed down here. Right? I'm not expecting Love to be fully healthy. Juwan Jennings is the next guy. It's just the same thing with Ayuk. Should be a, it's a pretty decent matchup with New England. He should profit from the fact that Gonzalez might be on Ayuk the whole time. So Juwan Jennings could potentially get back into the end zone, but this is kind of a back to earth game. I do have him 5 spots ahead of consensus, but I still think, he's not going to be able to replicate 3 touchdowns again, to be honest. Calvin Ridley's the next one. This one's very simple, just big play potential. I have him 10 spots ahead of ADP. If he hits, he hits, and if he hits, he should probably even beat this, right? Like 27th ranked. He should probably be even higher if he hits. He's kind of boom or bust in that regard. Next is Jalen Waddle. Everybody's down on Jalen Waddle and the Dolphins in general, but as I mentioned, the Titans do not scare me. I think it should be a closer game. And I trust Mike McDaniel, dude. I think he's going to be able to scheme Jalen Waddle open. He has one of the highest yards per route run. They just don't give him enough volume. And I think they right that this week, hopefully. Jameson Williams is the next dude. Basically, Seattle Seahawks have the best coverage. I know he's getting a lot of volume. I have him 6 spots under ADP. Seattle Seahawks are legit, dude. They have the best secondary in the NFL. T. Higgins is the last guy on this tier. He's still adjusting, still getting healthy. He can obviously get some touchdown equity and get into the end zone. Joe Burrow's looking good. Bengals are desperate. It's just, I don't think they're going to need a T. Higgins game against Carolina. I think it could be like a chase and run game. Next is JSN. JSN, what can I say about him? Shootout potential, as I mentioned, but his volume's kind of inconsistent. That's why I don't have him higher. Khalil Shakir is the next one. He's basically the wide receiver 1 for the Bills. It's just a tough matchup against Baltimore. I think they're going to try to impose their will, try to run the game. It could be a James Cook and Dalton Kincaid game. I think Shakir, if somebody's going to produce, I do think it's going to be Shakir for them. Brian Thompson is the next. It's just a tough matchup, right, against the Texans. But he is like the main guy. But it's just a tough matchup. I think the Jags, it's tough to trust them. Trevor Lawrence doesn't look too great. Michael Pittman is next. It's just they're playing against Pittsburgh. I think it's going to be a brutal game. Watt's going to be putting Richardson on his ass most of the game. The rapport between him and Richardson does not look good. And Michael Pittman just is not a very exciting option, but he could get the volume. That's why he is ahead of Christian Kirk, who's the next guy. Same thing with Brian Thomas. It's just a tough matchup. The team looks brutal, but you still have to respect the fact that these guys are talented, that Trevor Lawrence is capable, and anything can happen. Last guy is Rome Odunze. Finally shows up last week, but unfortunately, Keenan Allen is going to probably play, so Rome Odunze's ceiling is very much capped. I actually don't have Keenan on this list, but if Keenan does play, I'd probably put Keenan like ahead of Khalil Shakir, like over here. And then Odunze I'd probably move down. I just think when Keenan comes back, they're just going to force feed him the ball just off name recognition alone. So that's the tier list, boys. I hope you guys like it. Hope you enjoyed this video. If you did, it really helps the channel if you guys give me a like, man. Give me a sub. Let me know what you guys think. Give me some feedback. I love to listen to feedback about these videos if you guys don't like this format. And I'll catch you guys in this video over here.